Hello everybody, my name is Brian Price and I'm here with Stratus Solutions and we're here to talk about dashboards for DevOps. It's been a pretty popular topic at most of the different sessions over the conference, and so kind of the purpose of our talk today is really going to focus on some different techniques that we've helped different customers with in integrating the DevOps environment that shows the metrics that the different tools are providing that most people are seeing and using within their overall tool chain, combining that with the overall infrastructure to help uncover problems, increase communication, and overall deliver more effective and efficient software. So, do a quick overview of who we are, Stratus Solutions. Probably not many people have heard of us. Talk about kind of the typical software efficiency challenge that faces most companies and a little bit of the journey into where we got to DevOps and why we're here today. We'll talk and try to explain more of the value that we've seen DevOps dashboards bring our customers, as well as organizations across many different industries. I'm going to bring Dave Page up here on stage, and Dave's going to give a demo of some of the dashboard examples that we've used and helped customers with. And then we're going to share some success stories to kind of illustrate some of the power that this has actually helped different organizations in different industries achieve. So really quickly, I'll just talk a little bit about who we are. So we're an East Coast-based company, Stratus Solutions. We really help companies really accelerate their overall adoption of different technologies. We focus really in three different areas within DevOps, cloud infrastructure, and cybersecurity, and providing services that help transition organizations into adopting those technologies. We're also a partner with ElectricFlow and have implemented a number of different implementations of that for different customers as well. So let's talk about kind of this typical software efficiency challenge and why we've kind of got to where we are today. Traditionally, the mythical man myth of we try to add more people to the problem and it doesn't work always, right? So then, the adoption of different technologies to streamline the existing teams that are in place to help make technology more efficient, although we've kind of seen there isn't a one-size-fits-all DevOps technology that helps to accelerate organizations through all the different phases that you need to improve on. There isn't, this combined unified platform. So organizations are choosing and picking what technologies work best within their overall environment. Well, those technologies, we found, produce all sorts of different information and different metrics. And typically, we look at those very siloed. So by integrating and bringing those together, it really helps to produce a more holistic and comprehensive picture to really identify potential efficiencies within the overall environment. So if we take a look at kind of the typical DevOps environment for a company, there's different planning tools, testing tools, configuration management tools, and build tools that really produce different metrics. And at the surface, they're obviously very valuable. You take a look at a planning tool like Atlassian's Jira that most organizations use. They provide some very great metrics to kind of look and monitor the overall number of bugs that we're seeing within an overall release, helping to anticipate potential issues that we're going to see in the future. And they even provide dashboards within those tools to help better identify and kind of discover information about that information. But what we find is there's a lot of times there's interrelated information and metrics that really, when you combine them together, can produce a really great picture of what's really going on in a dev environment. For example, if you start looking at the correlation between maybe build failures or delays and build failures in testing, and look at the difference between the number of reported bugs that are going up, not only does that provide you information, if you relate that back to the number of files and complexity of changes for a release, to identify potentially where that bottleneck really exists. But also what it does is, if you've heard some talks earlier yesterday, talking about how DevOps tools can really help you kind of begin to do predictive analytics on where your delivery cycles are most likely to fail in the future. So kind of to sum all that up, really what we've found is DevOps dashboards really help an organization respond very, very quickly to bottlenecks, whether it's in their existing delivery pipelines or potentially, some experiments that they're trying out. The other big thing that we've seen DevOps dashboards do is measure the ROI from certain technologies that are in use within organizations or ones that have been invested in. So if you've had a vendor say, I can reduce your testing time and increase efficiency by 20%, how quickly and how agile can you measure that efficiency? And DevOps dashboards provide that on-demand ability to do such. And then also, it helps identify new investments that you might want to be making to increase other areas of efficiency to deliver software even quicker. So to help illustrate this kind of today, we're going to kind of go through a scenario that we've pulled together from a number of different client cases and tried to make it pretty simple for hopefully everybody to understand here. That's hopefully something that most people can kind of relate to also. So for fans of the hit TV show, Pied Piper produces data compression software, right? We've kind of distilled it down into they're working in two different platforms. So they've got a web platform and a mobile platform. Most organizations that are building, software probably have something similar. They have an interesting deployment environment that also mimics some customers that we've worked with, where they have a dev and a test environment that's automated, and the transition to go from dev to test is completely automated. However, when they go from test into their QA environment and QA into production, what they found is, there's manual steps and manual approvals that are needed. So modeling that within an overall organization sometimes leads itself to questions about, well, how do you automate that when you have manual steps involved? And we're going to kind of show some examples of how we've done that today. We're also going to use some samples of some releases that they're working on that's also indicative of most organizations. Working on a minor web release that adds a new encryption algorithm. It also adds some new APIs. It also coincides with a mobile release that takes advantage of those APIs. And then a patch release that helps to fix a security vulnerability that was present and discovered within the last major release they had. Talk really quickly about the DevOps environment that we've set up in this scenario that Dave's going to then show the example of our dashboard through. And so, like most organizations, they're using GitHub for a configuration management repository. They're using Jira to help track issues. They're using multiple different testing tools, one for unit testing, one for functional testing, with Robot Framework and Selenium. They're using ElectricCloud's ElectricFlow platform to automate that process that I described earlier between their development environment to test to QA to production, and model that in a way that's actually visual to them and actually helps to take out as many manual steps in the deployment as possible. And then we're going to show throughout this demo the power of using Grafana, which is an open source dashboarding tool. How many people here have heard today and yesterday about Capital One's Hygia product that is out released? So this is a similar dashboarding tool, but what we provided here and connected is the visualization at the infrastructure layer as well as the DevOps tool layer to really start to bring together communication between the devs team and the ops team into one place. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dave here, and Dave's going to go ahead and walk us through the dashboarding demo.
Once he gets it up here, okay. So we chose the scenario because it allowed us to show how low-level bottlenecks can bubble up to high-level views. So as you can see here across the top of all of these dashboards, there are filters. All of these filters are customizable. They're meant to focus the dashboard content on information that's relevant to whatever the stakeholders or group of stakeholders that may have visualization into this dashboard. In this case, we're looking at our 201 patch. So we can see that we're at 71% on the release path. This information is being pulled in from ElectricFlow. So again, this is a demo environment. So we have 7 stages that are defined in our release pipeline. We're on stage 5 of 7, which gives us our 71%. And then we can easily see how much time we have left until our release deadline. The last two widgets that you see here on the top row are manual steps. But when I say manual, I mean they simply mean that you're going into ElectricFlow and you're checking a button to say that, for instance, the dev team is giving approval for automated deployment into QA. And the same goes for the last widget. Once the QA testing has been done, they go in through ElectricFlow, they give the validation, and it deploys to pre-prod or production, however the organization's structured. Going into the second widget, or the second row here, this is a nice rolled up view of all of the releases that we're actively tracking. You can easily and quickly see what percentage you are in the timeline, what your planned end and start dates were, how long you've been working in the release, how long you've been sitting at any one stage within your release pipeline. The bottom widget is any manual interaction that goes back to clicking the button and giving the approval. So you can quickly see where you stand as far as giving that approval. So we can see down here in the middle widget that our mobile 2.1 is at 28%. We have about a week or so until our planned release. Well, we can focus in on that a little bit more. Go into the filter, and I can't see that, Brian. Is that it? All right. So, and we can drill down on that a little bit quicker. We can see it, easily that we're being held up in our development, or we haven't gotten our development approval to get to QA. Probably should be in QA at this point. So we'll take a step and look at it a little bit deeper. And the process overview. So for this dashboard, we'll pull in metrics from ElectricFlow, Jira, Robot Framework and Selenium, Jenkins, and GitHub. So you can, a lot of times what we tend to do is we carry widgets. So if you look in the top left-hand corner, this is a subset of the overview widget that you saw on the previous dashboard. We tend to carry widgets from dashboard to dashboard for a couple of reasons. One, closed communication loops, sustained transparency, make sure everybody knows where you are. It's something help facilitate that feedback loop. And the last two widgets are from Jira. And we can see, down here, we can see that we still have some issues in progress, and even worse, we still have some in the to-do status. Again, demo, we're just trying to show that, okay, we're being slowed down, but we're trying to find out where this bottleneck is. Moving in here to the middle widget, we'll cover it a little bit deeper in the next dashboard. But again, it's a quick snapshot, high-level view of the most recent functional test results. So right now, how, based on the last test, whether you passed or failed, or what number of tests passed or failed. And then you can see how long your build times have been taken, or your build successes and your test successes, or success rates over time. And then in the bottom row, you can see how your repo, your GitHub commits, to see how efficient or how often people are committing to the repository. And then the remaining widgets there on the bottom row are basically giving you insight into your orchestration automation, right? So your Jenkins, basically in this scenario, we're using Jenkins as our development pipeline, and we're using ElectricFlow for our automated application release automation, which is the end-to-end solution. So it allows us to see how well we're using our available assets. Can we get better? Do we have bottlenecks? Where are we slowing down? And we can obviously see that the flow job wait times is high, right? I mean, we're waiting a long time to actually get our jobs to run. So again, we can dig in that a little bit further, and let's see if it were being held up, potentially in our development environment. Is that the one, Brian? No, that's the infrastructure. One more. All right. So again, across the top row, that is all build metrics. It's geared specifically to build, so you know instantly whether you passed or failed your build. And then you're looking at your build successes and failures. In this case, we're looking in the last 60 days. So we know how many have failed, how many have passed within the last 60 days, what our average build time is based on that time span, and then what it looks like as the trends over time. Moving into the bottom or middle widget here, we got our unit test framework, so we can see the passes and failures of our unit test, as well as our functional test, how long have our test cases been taking to run autonomously, and then you can look at that trends over time, in this case again over the last 60 days. And then as you see, we carried the widget from the previous dashboard for our static tests into here, as well as our vulnerability scanning results, our high, low, and medium risk results. So To give a better context here, we're pulling the information from the scanning tools, Selenium and Jenkins to build this dashboard. So I mean, we're building, we're deploying, we're testing autonomously, right? So we having the insight and ability to see how well these things are running, what the efficiencies are. Where can I find inefficiencies and make them better? How can I accelerate my velocity? Or, in this case, as we're trying to show if you have an issue, how you can find it quickly, resolve it, and keep progressing forward. So, in this case, from the development perspective, everything is looking okay. There's nothing glaring there, but we can look at the infrastructure and see how well that's sustaining. Is that it? All right, so we've drilled all the way down to the infrastructure level. The top two rows are geared in on Jenkins and ElectricFlow. We're not picking on ElectricFlow here, by the way, but just using this as a scenario. And then you can see the system analytics down here in the bottom widgets. So you can see the other thing that we're pulling in here is ElectricFlow's job executions as well as Jenkins jobs executions, and overlaying that on top of our system analytics. And we're able to drill down into that over time and look at things drill down into it and see what that behavior is at snapshots in time. Help better have insight into how well things are sustaining. But in this case, we obviously see the big glaring red box here. So that's our flow memory. I mean, maybe it's an increase in load on the flow server. It could mean that maybe we need to add some memory to it, or maybe it's we need to cluster our flow servers to help make this more efficient, hold our release and our cadence for our pipeline. So, I mean, like I said, we just geared these dashboards for this demo, again, just to show a few examples of how we've leveraged a variety of them to help some of our customers. From this point, I think I'll pass it back to Brian and let him finish your slides. You?
Thanks, Dave. One of the things that we found that's powerful, when you have dashboards that are displaying this in real time, no longer can it be this finger pointing game between the ops team and the dev team about who's at fault, right? So you've got really that consolidated view that everybody can get a good perspective about where exactly the potential problem is. So as kind of Dave is illustrating there, there's a spike in memory utilization that potentially is holding up the overall release from progressing forward. Well, that is something that traditionally we found, there's a lot of finger pointing, the dev team saying, well, that's not my problem, the ops team saying it's not their problem, and actually having all of that information aggregated together is extremely valuable that we've found in a lot of our customer environments. So with the time remaining, we're going to go ahead and talk about some of the success stories that we've had with some different customers in their overall environments. So let me forward. So highlight one customer here in particular. So I mentioned before, we're located right outside of Washington, D.C., so we work a lot in the federal space as well as in commercial customer spaces. And this is an example of how automation has really helped an industry that's a little bit slower to evolve. And then the dashboarding impact that's actually helped them to actually be able to visualize and achieve. So we're working with a company that's building UAV software, right? So it's not your traditional mobile app or your web app by any means. There's a lot of manual processes involving air-gapped networks, involving carrying a laptop from with a deployment into an actual device to deploy that, which is very different than most organizations. And so what we've found is we implemented ElectricFlow for them. When they were seeing on average, and this metric I think shocks most people, on average it was taking them 12 days with 7 people to get a deployment every month for their latest build into that environment, which by anybody that builds web apps and modern apps is a crazy amount of time. But largely there were security requirements that they were going through, a lot of manual steps that they had to verify. And in that process, what we were able to do is implement ElectricFlow, expedite that overall deployment. There are still manual steps involved, but ultimately they reduced that down to just basically 2 staff working for a little bit less than 3 days across their 10 different labs that they're actually deploying this software in. So it's 600 hours a month this customer is now saving, and they're seeing and measuring that as the technology, as the releases evolve, using dashboards and seeing that efficiency in real time. Another success story that we've worked with as well, working for one of the big 4 professional services companies, building a healthcare application, and they're looking at the advantages of potentially moving from an on-prem VMware-based cloud environment to a hybrid cloud, leveraging Azure as well as VMware. And ultimately, despite the infrastructure challenges, we were finding that the developers were still talking about it's still taking too long to fix issues, and ultimately they were investing in point DevOps solutions and never really spending that time to integrate those together. And so through our work in just basically working to integrate their overall teams together, increase that communication, building dashboards to kind of measure that and improve that communication. In 3 months, they saw a 15% productivity increase, and they could measure it, and they actually could go back to their leadership and demonstrate that. So, everybody talks about getting metrics out of your dev team, and we just feel, dashboards are a very simplified way of doing that in real time. So with that being said, we got about 45 seconds left. So are there any questions? We probably have time for maybe one question before we're out of here. Sure.
How do you aggregate all of the information from different systems into a dashboarding system?
So we have a series of plugins that we use. So Grafana has some native plugins that help to pull in information about infrastructure, and we've built a layer of plugins on top of that that integrate with ElectricFlow, with Jira, with Git, et cetera, that kind of helps facilitate that. I think probably we're about out of time, so real quick, I'll just put up a slide of our contact information. We'll hang around after this too. If anybody has any additional questions, be happy to answer those. But it's been a pleasure speaking with you guys today. Thank IT Revolution for hosting such an amazing conference and ElectricCloud for offering this opportunity to speak to you guys today. Thank you guys.